Namaste. The book I have been assigned is called Just Like That by Osho, and it's a talk about Sufi stories. So, the first chapter of this book is called The Unteachable Teaching, and it's about Libanani. So, a man comes to Libanani, a Sufi teacher, and asks, "Will you teach me?" And the seeker says, the teacher says that, "Do you know how to learn?" It's quite absurd as it is, but then, do you know how to learn? And then the man is confused and he's like, "Okay, so will you teach me how to learn?" And he says, "Will you help me to teach you how to learn?" And now the understanding of this parable is that we got to be receptive. So you can learn geography, maths, science everywhere as you are in your being. But for this kind of understanding to seep in, you need some internal transmutation. And for that, what you need is abhipsa, which is given by Aurobindo, a burning desire to dissolve yourself and trust the master, trust the process fully and simply as is. So that's the teaching. The second chapter is called Why Have You Come? This is about Bahauddin al-Shah. Now, Bahauddin al-Shah is describing different kinds of people who are in his circle, in his Sufi circle, and seeking admission. So the first one says that he is there because he has given some magic potion to Bahauddin. Bahauddin gave him some magic potion and he just got cured. The second one says that I have come here because you are the greatest man on earth. The third one says that I have come here because you hear me out and you allow me to speak and whatever, I just feel heard with you. And the fourth one says that you will change my life or something like that, on those lines. Now the idea here is that the first one can be, like the teacher, can be replaced by a physician. Yeah, Osho says that anybody, like a doctor could have given you a magic potion, you got better. This cannot be a reason that you come to a master. The second one says that you're greatest man on earth. So there is some agenda to be more associated to someone who knows more, someone wiser, something. So there's an agenda to come to a teacher. Now the third one says that you, it is allowed, you have let me, you have heard me and you've given these discourses. So he says that, everybody wants to speak and everybody wants to be heard. We are using each other's presence to just get away from loneliness, to get away from anything that there is here. And for that we are using, but that's just basically venting. That's just basically nothing. That is not good enough a reason that you come to a spiritual master. You go to a psychoanalyst for that. And the fourth one says that the claim that you've changed my life or something is just sentimental. It's an experience. So he says you gave me an exercise called Vayabsa or something like that. Basically an experience like a Kundalini or something like that. And it got me somewhere. But all Osho is saying is don't get dissuaded by your experiences. Get into the space of the experiencer. Become the experiencer, become that something that experiences all this. And that's what the teaching is in the second chapter. Now the third one, it's called Open and Shut Case. This is my favorite chapter. This is about Sali and Rabia. So Sali says that whoever knocks at the door continually, it will be open to him. And the second, which is the Rabia, who is also an enlightened master, says, how long will you say it will be open? The door has never been shut. Now there are these two different, very stark different approaches to the same truth. So Osho says both are true, both are right, both are doing their job at its best in a way. But the first one is really, really concerned about the seeker. So he is giving these methods, like for example, the 112 methods of meditation, for one to reach, to become the step-by-step, to create like a step-by-step process for the seeker. So the second one is for the people who have attained. But then how is it useful, right? I mean, you need this teaching, you need a master to take you from point A to point B in a way. Even if you have arrived, even if everything is fine, even if there is a journey, but then there is a journey. And that journey has to be recognized and valued and also given its own importance. So that's why it's called an open and shut case. So at the same time, both are right, both are saying the same thing also, because we have arrived, and that's the ultimate truth of things. But well, he concludes saying that you have to if you have to throw the old out, you have to get something new. And that new, to throw the conditioning out, the new is the meditation techniques, is the new world that a teacher can teach you. So this is the third chapter. Now the fourth one is super interesting. It's called Asking the Experts, which is filled with our social media and our lives and the whole influencer game. Experts meaning, so now this parable is super funny. There's a man who's dead and he's buried in a coffin. What happens is he comes to consciousness later and he tells people that I am alive. But there are these amazing experts, people who are like super good at knowing whether someone is dead or alive. They say they have already confirmed, they have announced that he is dead earlier. So he cannot be revived, right? Technically, you can't revive unless there's a Jesus in your vicinity or something like that. So he can't be revived. So people actually bury him alive. That's the parable. Now, I know these parables are like super crazy, but Osho brings this amazing wisdom in this. He says we are not alive. We are going and living our lives by scriptures, by commands, by social media, by influences from our family, influences from everywhere around. So we have a social mind, a personal mind, but one has to give up that. We have to stop believing in the experts and people who are influencing, people who are telling us blah, 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 and really live life and be really, really alive in our own self. So what he says is, don't come in your own way. By using all this knowledge, this borrowed knowledge, is going to be very, very difficult, that you have to let go of that, but you got to let go of that. Now, this fifth chapter is called Mind Games, that we all play, and it's very evident. So the game of judgment, that's what he speaks about. So in this one, there is a man who loses his ex, and he says that my neighbor has stolen it. And the neighbor walks by the next morning and he's like, his walk has changed. This walk is of the thief and he looks different and he is different and all that. So he creates basically an understanding, a proof that, oh yeah, this person is XYZ. He's the thief and whatever. But the next day, this man goes to the garden and just finds the same axe. Now, what happens here? So Osho here talks about perception, how we are dissuaded, how perception is so deceptive. So he says something very beautiful. He says, we have a phrase called too good to be true, right? So the mind is catastrophic. We always want to believe something negative very easily. And whoever quote unquote says that, we don't question that person. We just say, हाँ ठीक है, किसी ने बोला अब ये यही बात सही है. तो Osho says कि perception इतनी deceiving चीज़ है, उस पे कहाँ जा रहे हो? He invites you to get into your being, and he says that you become passive by meditation, but you also be very, very alert and alive and find the God that is hidden in you. That's the story. So he says, I have followed this story, that I have found the God within me, and I want you to follow that too. Okay, the next one is the 6th chapter, and this is like blind man's buff. It's called blind man's buff, and this parable is super, super interesting. So this is about Sadi. Sadi, he says, a man had an ugly daughter. He married her to a blind man because nobody else would have her. A doctor offered to restore the man's sight, but the father would not allow him for the fear that he would then divorce his daughter. Quite true, right? It happens. So what is it? So here it's a metaphor, of course. So the blind man is the man. The blinded part of us is the conditioning. The father is the ego. This is the crux of the matter. That keeps us protected to see things. So blind man is basically ignorance. He's talking about how ignorant we are. Because self-knowledge is very unsettling. I'm sure you've gone through this dark night of the soul where everything freaking comes down and crumbles down. Our life becomes hell. You start enjoying life because you're questioning every damn thing that you've always believed. And that's what he talks about. He says self-knowledge is so unsettling, it's so painful. You have to pass through hell for that. The birth passage is so narrow that you feel it's like doomed. There is death at the end of it. But the teacher, the Sufi teachers or the master is there to just say, oh, just 2 more miles. Go 2 more miles. Maybe, you'll just get there. You'll just get there. You'll just get there. Although the journey is long and they can see that there is a longer journey. And Sufi teachers could see potentiality. So they would also only invest in the ones who have this in this lifetime somehow. Apparently, that's what the book says. So the idea is that when the master says 2 more miles, 2 more miles, you have opened, you have gone through the self-knowledge. But your ego wants to keep you comfortable, wants to keep you at the fence. And that's the reason we end up getting lost in these journeys. So the invitation here is, he ends it with a very beautiful thing. He says, if you want moksha, you want God, you want ecstasy, then the cost is suffering and you got to freaking pay it. Okay, the next chapter is 7th chapter. The man who loved seagulls. Amazing as is. So there's a man who goes on the beach and the seagulls come and dance around him and play with him and all that. There's not a man, it's a boy. And then the father goes and he's like, you know what? These seagulls are amazing. Why don't you get some to play with you? So the next day, the boy is like really excited and he goes on the beach and he sees that they are only hovering above him. They're no more coming to play with him. Here, there is amazing insight that Osho says, if ever, the whole idea is that life moves in circles. It creates this space where there is love and there is communication and there is vibration. So everything is vibrations, the vibes that we talk about. So the whole idea is to be so relaxed, so much in love with life, so much active in our being that it feels like everything is alive, and you believe in the glimpse that you get of this truth. You go ahead and you believe in the glimpse and you can experience it. So the Sufi story of the seagull says that there is a deep affinity with nature and we got to do the non-doing. So that is when the divine flowers within you, the divine experiences within you. So there is a metaphor here which I want to say, the bow and the arrow. So the arrow is always tensed and it's towards the goal, whereas the bow is very relaxed and you just become the bow, he says, which I find amazing. So the chapter 8 is chapter 8 is Beyond Mother's Knees. Beyond Mother's Knees is again 3 men in a circle. They come to get admission in a Sufi teacher's Sufi circle. So the first one gets very angry, by the behavior of the teacher. So he leaves. The second one comes and he says he hears someone on the way to get there only around, the sage is fraud. So he leaves. And the third one comes, he sits there for some time, but this teacher doesn't speak much, so he leaves also. So the first one, what Osho says is that is judging by the sight. So he looks at this thing. So this story is about Bayazid, if I'm pronouncing it right. So Bayazid is the teacher and he is explaining this about Bayazid. So in a circle, someone judges Bayazid by his madness. He's behaving very erratically. So sometimes even Osho has used this, Osho was saying that the Jains would come to him just to get a recorroboration, like validation of Jainism through him. So he started speaking about sex, so they ran away. The second one he did was he was used to wear khadi and praise Gandhi in the beginning. Then the Gandhians came and then he started speaking against him, so they ran away. So he's like, sometimes teachers do these things, just this erratic behavior to show off the non-serious. So basically he says there are disciples and there are followers. So the followers are just window shopping. They are not fully interested. They are not decided fully. Their burning desire isn't there. Their abhipsa is not there. So it makes no sense. So they get dissuaded by behavior, by hearings from something. And the third one is an interesting guy. He stayed there, but he left. But he didn't realize that the teacher, when he's talking to someone else also, is also talking to me. Not necessarily I get the attention. So attention is the feed for the ego, and that's why it's very important to see that you're not dissuaded when you don't get attention, but you still stick through and go through the pain of being with the teacher to achieve what you want. That's what it is. Chapter 9, when Shibil is absent. Shibil comes to Junaid, who is a beautiful Sufi teacher, and this is a Mohammedan, like a Muslim environment. So he says that his wife starts going behind the screen when Shibil arrives. So Junaid says, don't worry, you don't have to do that because he's not present, he's absent. And the second time, then when that happens, because it's like the highest appreciation a seeker could receive from someone, so he receives that from his master, that he's absent. Now finally his ego is gone, so his ego creeps in and he starts crying. And when he starts crying, then Junaid says he's back. So the whole thing is that the ego strikes back. Even if you had the glimpse of the divine, even if you are a nobody, even if everything is happening, you got to be watching this. You got to be watching your own behavior, and it sneaks in from wherever. Like in this case, it just sneaked in 2 minutes, in 2 seconds probably, and Junaid got it. And Junaid showed it to him, and he wept because he lost the divine in that moment. So that's the beauty of this story. So he says that you have to stay unidentified with both meaning what? The duality. So he says that 2 banks of the river are the part and the whole, and oneness is flowing in the center. And you got to see how you are part of something and you are the whole itself. And this dance, this divorce and marriage, this connection, this relationship, he talks about Gestalt here. Gestalt is the relationship between figure and a ground. So he says, like right now, you may have so many noises around you, but you can only hear my noise, because that's what becomes important. It comes to surface. So when something comes to surface, you have to see that the gestalts are changing. The whole idea is changing. The moment is changing. But you got to transcend it, and there is only one thing to do, that is to stay unidentified with the part and the whole and everything random that comes in this process. The last chapter is called Just a Small Coin. It's a very interesting, beautiful chapter also. It's about Uwais al-Qarni, and someone offers him a coin. So he takes a coin, and then he's like, but he's like, I don't need it because I already have a coin. So he's like, but the man is like, how long will it last you? So, but he says, no, trust me, this is enough. But then the guy is like, no, but it won't last you, right? So he says something beautiful. This I'm going to read. Guarantee me that I shall live longer than this sum will suffice me, and I will accept your gift. So here the teaching is of the here and now, of the moment, that he says that you can't breathe for tomorrow. You can't have anything that is going on. Money is basically a representation of future and accumulated this thing. And ambition needs time. Nothing else really needs time. Ambition is madness. Ambition creates those things. And he describes how every 7-year period of a person, human being's life, is very beautifully designed to do things. But our highest sex power is from 14 to 17. And if we are really allowed to have free sex, we'll not have all the corrupted sexual activity which keeps us repressed, which keeps us conditioned, which doesn't let us go ahead. That will totally cease if we were to allow to fully express sexually in that moment. So he says sex is very beautiful, but when it's in the season, but when it's outside the season, it's ugly. And that's the reason we should be allowed to have free experience of everything that life brings to us in that age, in that point of time. So he's coming back to the parable. He says the moment is the small coin and time is the big money, and all you have is the moment. The real wisdom is in the here and now. And die to the past, die to the future, live in for the present. So trust life, simply trust, Just trust, just like that. That's what it is. Thank you.